Hello, extra time.
They're important to the league not to get a hook because it damages your reputation. It makes people, when they read it, just laugh at you.
Simple look, they're playing in the League of Ireland, they're playing in the Europa League, and they're credit to the game in this country. Maybe we should get Stephen Kenny then to manage the Irish team.
Hello and welcome to the Extratime Football Podcast. Your host Luke Jordan, episode 6 this week. Delighted to say Donal Ryan, Oisin, Langan are alongside me. Lads, how are we?
How are you?
Good, Luke. Thanks very much.
Couldn't later on we chat to Mark Rossiter. We will delve into with Mark the sacking the deck and the vine, maybe a bit of Dundalk talk too. But for the meantime, we'll just run through maybe the fixtures from last weekend. I suppose Donal, start with yourself with Sligo Rovers. 0-0 draw in the Showgrounds. I think probably Sligo will be the happier of the two sides.
Happier the two sides with the draw? I don't think so, Luke, to be honest with you. I think a lot of the feeling around Sligo is that they certainly left the 3 points after them. I don't think Shamrock Rovers offered too much in terms of going forward. Well, in terms of an attacking threat, I suppose, rather, like it was almost as if Sligo Rovers had their number for the majority of the game anyway. Of course, the big talking point is that in the middle of the second half, Leon Pohls coming out and cleaning Simon Power out of it. Plenty of debate as to whether it was a red card or not. I was doing commentary on the game myself for Ocean FM, and from where myself and Gavin Dykes from CoCom were looking at it, it was a clear red card. Now, you can argue about the three defenders filing back that were they going to get there anyways to cover. So if you're not going to send them off for the last man, maybe that's fair enough. But Pohls made absolutely no attempt to play the ball at all. He came rushing off his line, was the first man to Simon Power. I think if you look back on the replay, you can see that Power was ahead of the three defenders getting back anyway. But Pohls made absolutely no attempt to play the ball and absolutely cleaned them out. And I think it's safe to say the majority of the Showgrounds was disgusted that Rob Hennessy only reached for a yellow. But all in all, a very good performance from Sligo Rovers. It's been a great start to the season. 6 points now from 5 games. John Russell happy enough with the start after I was speaking to him afterwards. He's happy enough with the start, but obviously not too happy with the referee's performance. But things are certainly looking up from Sligo Rovers' perspective anyway.
Yeah, and we have a bit of a clip here from Ocean FM from the games. Let's listen to John Russell talk about the referee decision.
Yeah, he's knocked it by him. He's going to put it into an empty net, and I don't know how he stayed on the pitch. They're not. We're not. It's so frustrating, and what can you do? Look, referees, officials, it's a tough job, but when they're blatant calls, it's so frustrating as a manager, because we're all trying to get points here. It's so hard to win games in this league, and when you're on top, especially at home, and you're against teams that are coming down and have quality players that can hurt you, and then when you're getting those big calls to get in front, it's hugely frustrating. And for me, the keeper has to go off. They're down to 10 men, and then we're in the ascendancy, and we don't get it. And again, the Shells, we probably get a draw. I feel we probably win the game if we get that goal. So look, it is what it is. We have to just move on and try and win our next game.
For balance then, Oisin, you were chatting to Barry Murphy, and on the Voice Notes podcast, he believed that Leon Pohls, it wasn't a red card.
Yes, I suggested to him that he had gone full goalkeepers union with his defence of Pohls. He argued that was not the case. Anyone who's curious to know what he said can go back and listen to the extratime.com League of Ireland Voice Notes podcast. We did an updated version on Saturday night, so we kind of tacked it onto what we had done on Friday. I'm still not sure if that's the system I'll stay with, if we'll just do separate podcasts from here on in. But listen, that's a debate for another day. I thought it was a red card initially when I saw it. My instinct was he has to go. It wasn't quite Harold Schumacher, but it wasn't particularly great for Pohls, and I think he can count himself very, very lucky not to have seen a red card. And Donal, I've no doubt you've watched it back a few times, and I heard Graham Gartland talk about it on the RTE sports podcast with Raftiello, and he said that basically it's if the keeper is not the last man and there's someone behind the keeper, then that makes that person the last man. It's not just the keeper, if that makes sense. Am I making sense of what I'm saying there?
Yeah.
But from what you're saying, there was no man behind Pohls. So if Power beat him to it, Power was clean through and there was no one to get to him. So Pohls, under that logic, probably should have got a red.
My understanding on Oisin is that because Power's touch took him slightly away from the goal, that was what kind of negated the referee's decision to give him a yellow card, even though it looked as though he was clean through on goal anyway, even though the ball was kind of drifted
Yeah.
slightly to the right. I mean, you're talking fractions there. I mean, that's not going to decide whether,
Yeah.
you're talking milliseconds really if you're going to boil it down to that. But like for me, it's a clear red card.
We could debate it all night and not come to a full consensus, but it was interesting to hear Johnny Ward on the LOI Central say that he got in contact with 2 referees and one said red and one said yellow.
Yeah, I thought that as well.
Yeah, but again, I suppose it's referees dominating the conversation again. I mean, like if it just to change the kind of game going to Pats Dundalk, like, if you were to ask, I'd say both sets of fans about the referee performance that game. It was abysmal. Like I thought the referee was so poor in the match. So again, like, it's the conversation is dominating. I feel like every podcast, every paper, it's about referee performances, and I don't know. I don't know what the solution here is. Is it just a simple case of professionalising referees? But that is the finance there, and there's huge issues here.
Well, the Premier League has professionalised them. Has it stopped all debate about referees? No. Referees are human, so they're going to make mistakes. And if you make a mistake on a pitch, with the exception of goalkeepers, chances are you'll get away with it. If you're a referee, you are completely on your own. I appreciate you've got your assistant refs and your lines people and all that, but you are pretty much completely on your own. So every mistake you make is going to be exacerbated. Also, even if you make a fair call, you've got one tribe calling you out rightly or wrongly. So I feel a great level of sympathy for referees. And even Rob Hennessy on Saturday night, my own personal instinct is it was red. But the fact is that the referee, I'll go back to Johnny, one said red, one said yellow. I'm not, like, I wouldn't die on the cross saying it was a red. Apologies to anyone who's offended. Why you'd be offended, I don't know, but if you are, sorry. But I do feel a great element of sympathy for referees because very often they're the ones who kind of cop the flack if your team doesn't win. And I would love, not just in the League of Ireland, but for all referees or refereeing bodies to come out and chat more. And after a game, like they could actually have, I think people would understand if there was a release every Monday from the referee saying, well, this is why Pohls wasn't sent off. Because people acknowledge they're human. And even if they said, well, we've looked at it back and this is why he wasn't, and maybe he should have been, because if you're a player or you're a manager, you have to admit your mistakes. And I wouldn't mind if refs did the same because they're human beings and they make mistakes.
Of course,
So,
and don't get me wrong.
Sorry, Don. So it's essentially like what we see with the PGMOL in England. That's what you're kind of looking for, Oisin.
And I still don't think we see enough from them. You nearly have to drag them over the coals to get something out of them. I mean, look at the Liverpool Spurs thing. Maybe they react a bit quicker now. I don't know. I don't think they do, lads. Like, I don't think it's a regular Monday morning thing or whatever. But I think what happens is the refs get irritated because they feel everyone's having a go. We get irritated because we don't feel that they're admitting their mistakes, or we don't feel maybe they're being punished for their mistakes, which they do get punished, by the way. Like if you mess up big time at a high level, you get moved to a lower level for a while. So I just think communications is such an important thing, and I think it's so important here that we hear from everybody, and we just don't hear from them enough. And I actually
see Howard Webb does it in England, for example. Like you will see Howard Webb come out. Once a couple of weeks, he was talking about VAR decisions, that why they called that, why it was wrong, etc. So there's a bit of it in England. In Ireland, I don't think I've ever heard a referee speak.
Occasionally you'll hear the head of the referees speak, but it's very, very rare. And I'd like to hear from them more.
Yeah, sorry, Don, you want to
because it's a tough job. I don't envy them, lads, because when you go to be a League of Ireland referee, you must know the abuse that's coming your way. And you can have 7 good games, and if you make a perceived mistake in one game, that's what everyone focuses on.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, lads, I'm not coming out here throwing pelters at referees and stuff. I do appreciate that it's a very tough job, and as you said, Oisin, they are human and they do make mistakes. I think people are aware of that as well. You know, people do kind of factor that in. But when there seems to be nearly every week, there's one game that's decided by a poor refereeing decision, and you talk about referees being dropped down a level, a peg or two, maybe in England. That doesn't seem to be as common in Ireland. Maybe it's because we simply don't have the refs, or stuff like that. But like, surely when it's getting to a stage where that kind of stuff is happening, you don't think something needs to be done? Now, I don't know what that something is, but
Well, I'd love to professionalize them. I think that's the first step, because it's tough to work all week and then go out and referee a game. Like, you guys know it when you're doing commentary or covering games. If you've been doing work all week, it can be quite tough. The other thing is as well, right? Even if you give them all the technology in the world, they still can't get it right. Look at the amount of clangers that are still being made, even in VAR games or VAR games. So you just have to accept that forever there will be imperfection. Like, look at rugby. Look at all the technology they have and the respect that they actually get from the players and the assistance they can get all the time, not just in in soccer. Obviously, there are limited circumstances which you can go to VAR. In rugby, you can go all the time, I think, and still mistakes are made.
Well, I think for me, I think I agree with Donal here personally, because like if anyone can see my facial reaction, my head is in my hand here at the moment, because like the officiating, I think, in the League of Ireland is so poor. Like, an example would be that Chris Forrester on Friday night headed the ball out. It should be Dundalk corner. I'm a Pats fan, as everyone knows. It's a blatant Dundalk corner, and if the goal kick is given, the Forrester starts laughing in front of the Pats fans and Dundalk players, and no one could believe it wasn't a corner kick Dundalk. And Dundalk fans at the game will remember that instant. I'm just looking at it going, how can you get that wrong? No one else in the stadium thought it was a goal kick except the linesman and the referee. It's incredible. Like, to me, like, that's just like if that happens in the Senior League, it's a disgrace. Like, this is happening at the top level of our country, in the top two teams in the country nearly. Like, that's not good enough at any level. And that's why I get annoyed over League of Ireland officiating. I don't know. As I said, what's the solution? It probably is professionalisation of referees, but I do think there has to be a harsher punishment for poor referee performances. And I think that's just the way it goes. I don't know what you guys think.
Well, if you suspend the referee, who do you get to replace them? And I'm sorry, this is the question, by the way. How many refs are there that can referee League of Ireland games? Why are ex-players not being brought through? That's a big one for me. And if you professionalize it and you can keep people in football, then maybe it's an incentive for players who retire. Because at the moment, if you're playing football, if you're playing League of Ireland football, and that's the fun part, coaching, managing, refereeing, that's all stressful. Playing is fun. I get that it comes with its stresses as well. But I can't think of any high-profile League of Ireland player who's now reffing in the League of Ireland.
No.
Now, why is there no incentive? Is it a closed shop? Are they just not interested? Does there need to be a financial incentive? Those are all questions I'd ask. And
it's the same in England.
It's not a silver bullet.
Yeah, it's the same in England. Well, there's no ex-player being a referee in the Premier League after he retires.
But I understand it in England, because if you retire from the Premier League or Championship, you never have to work again. There's they don't even want to do TV, a lot of them, because they don't need it. Whereas in the League of Ireland, even the best paid players will have to do something else with their life. And if they don't want to manage, or they can't go into punditry, and even if you do, it's highly unlikely in this country at the moment you can make a full-time wage out of that, then refereeing is an option to stay in football. But at the moment, there's, from what I can see, zero incentive, because you can't do it professionally. It's not a silver bullet, and I'm not suggesting that you have to have played the game to ref the game. There are many examples of fine referees who have never played to a high level. But I think I would like to see that pathway open.
Yeah, I know it's part of the conversation that you could roll on for 3 hours with refereeing decisions. And I just, for myself, I just get frustrated. I saw the Leon Pohls incident. Totally agree. It's a red card. I understand the other argument, other referees saying possibly it's not. It's a stonewall red card. He makes no attempt for the ball. He just smashes Simon Power. Look, again, like they're the type of decisions, I suppose, that kind of grinds the fans. I think, we can't get the bait. Like, I think I can always accept an offside. Like an offside or a marginal call. We can all go. We can give out in the pub and give out about it. But we're talking about basic decision making, and we can't get that right at top level. What hope is there then for then Senior League and lower?
By the way, it's slightly off the topic, but if you're a Rovers fan or a Rovers defender, how glad are you to see Pohls come out and smash the lad? It really sends a message. I'm number one. This is my territory. If you come near my goal, I'm going to smash you. It really sends out a message. And Pohls, I don't know if he needed to send it out, but certainly, if I was running in on him now, I'd be thinking twice.
Yeah, but how glad are you if you get sent off?
Yeah. Well, on goalkeepers, because it's probably definitely worth talking about before we finish up part one. Leon Pohls, how did he play? Because again, a bit of scrutiny about him the last couple of weeks. How did Leon Pohls do? Despite the incident, obviously, with Simon Power, overall, how did he play and goal?
in fairness, he didn't do too bad. He didn't do too bad. He was probably the busier of the two keepers, bar maybe the last 15, 10 minutes, where Ed McGinty was called on a fair bit to kind of keep Sligo Rovers, not to keep them in it, but Shamrock Rovers were really kind of stepping up their attack. But no, he did okay, I thought. But Ed McGinty was also busy too. And again, I think McGinty probably the better of the two keepers anyway. But for all the scrutiny that Pohls has been under of late, and deservedly so, in my own opinion, he actually did all right. He actually did all right. Like there was no kind of nothing really erratic from him, bar what we've just spent the last 10, 15 minutes talking about.
Yeah.
Bar his attempt to kill Simon Power.
Yeah, bar that, but I think we've touched on that already. So.
Yeah. Sorry, I should clarify. I'm joking. Okay, I don't think he was actually trying to kill him. Schumacher, he was trying to kill the French lad running in on him, but Pohls was not trying to kill Simon Power. Just to be clear.
On the goalkeepers, suppose that what's interesting is obviously in Dublin 8 there was 2 changes in goalkeepers from Dundalk and Pat's changed, and we were chatting to Colin last week, and John Daly made I think the correct call was it's the harsh, brave one, but I think it was the correct call to make, taking out Pitaluga. I think having Daniel Rodgers back there, right, distribution might not be whatever, but in terms of just being a goalkeeper who can save a shot, and I think you could see the confidence in the back four having in the goalkeeper, had experienced goalkeeper behind, he made huge difference in the game. And Dundalk did the exact same. Munro, very good in goal again for Dundalk. So again, managers out there got their decision spot on. I think with change of goalkeepers, and it's tough, but I think Barry Murphy's going to talk about on voice notes about the age gap in the goalkeepers is madness now. Something like 27 down to 22 now in 10 years. It's incredible.
It is indeed. And to be fair to George Shelby, I actually think he's injured. He wasn't even in the Dundalk squad. I actually saw him in a pre-season game for Nottingham Forest, and he looked decent. In the first game, he looked very decent. Whether or not he carried an injury into that Sligo game, I don't know. But Munro's a good stopper as well, and apparently played well on Friday night. I actually didn't get to see that game yet. I will watch it before Friday because I'm back on duty on Friday night. But I'm not surprised that Rodgers came in. I'd seen Pitaluga in Waterford, seen him in the President's Cup, seen him in the game against Bows. He wasn't overly convincing. He's a young goalkeeper. He'll learn. It's tough to step into men's football. It's something that Barry Murphy went deep into the voice in the Voice Notes podcast, and he felt an element of sympathy for him, because when you lose your confidence, it's really tough, especially when you're in goals. It probably helped that Rodgers came back in, and Pat's also changed their formation for the game, from what I've read and what I've seen. And they just look more solid. And look, when you win, everything is great. Everything, what you do as a manager is perfect. When you lose, everything is terrible and you're the worst manager in the world. But I wasn't surprised to see Rodgers come in. And it was interesting to hear, by the way, John Daly quash any rumour that they had to play Pitaluga, because apparently in some contracts in the past, there's provisions that you have to play them if they're on loan with you. But that is not a stipulation in this contract. And Pitaluga, again, I heard people say that he was surprised when he was dropped. How he was surprised, I don't know, because he's young and I felt bad for him, and he's a very talented goalkeeper. There's no doubt in that. But he must have known, like, he was awful in Waterford. I said it to Barry when I was chatting to him the other day. I was shocked he wasn't brought up at halftime, and I really don't say that to be cruel. I say that just because that's what I thought would happen.
Well, Steve O'Donnell did it in Dundalk. He took him off at halftime, Shelby.
Yeah, he did. And when you're 4-0 down, does it make much difference? Look, were they 4-0 down at halftime in that game, Donal?
Yeah, they were, yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah. They only conceded one in the second half, so it was the right call. Yeah, possibly, but
just on Shelby as well, though, Oisin. Like, I know you had highlighted him as, I know you'd spoken before that you'd seen him in a friendly or whatever, and there was talk of him contesting the Forest jersey at some point. But I'd hope that he was injured going into the Rovers Dundalk game, because, and again, not throwing pelters at anybody and all this, etc., but it was as bad a goalkeeping performance as I've seen in a long, long time. I mean, at least 3 of those goals were ridiculously preventable. I suppose for him to be whipped off at half time after putting in a first half like that would do his confidence serious damage. Like, so for his own sake, I hope that it is an injury that's keeping him out and not just his poor form.
And I think it's believable that it is, because to go from his performance against Shamrock Rovers on the first night, which was really good, to what he produced against Sligo Rovers, I think only an injury could explain it. I hope that's the case anyway. But look, you feel sorry for anyone who's taken off at half-time in professional sport. It's cruel, but like I think he's a lot better than that performance suggested.
Well, I always go back to the example. I remember this is going back a couple of years now, but when Bielsa came into Leeds, and obviously he's a Leeds fan, I remember this Calvin Phillips was whipped off twice in the first half during that season. And look where he's not playing great at the moment, I know, but if you look where Calvin Phillips has gone from a bog standard championship midfield player to playing in the European Championship final 3 years later, like that's incredible rise. Like, so I think players can recover. I think you have to take the messaging on board. It's not the end of the world, I think.
Yeah. Listen, I think it says a hell of a lot more about Gareth Southgate than it does Calvin Phillips, the fact that he got to play in that European final, to be honest.
Really? Oh, no, well, okay. We won't go down that route because I rate Calvin Phillips, so we'll leave that one down.
I do, but I don't European final rate him.
Just really quick before we move on, I agree with Oisin with the back four. Definitely did help. I'll die on this word. I think that Pats should always play forward to back in Richmond Park. It never works playing 3. It's the pitch. I said to Conan Byrne, he agrees, so I must be right, that the pitch is made to play 4-3-3 or some sort of variation of that. It's not made for the pitch is too tight. It's just too tight to play.
You're the St. Pat's version of Ron Bassett. St. Pat's are playing 4-4 fecking 3. I changed the wording, obviously. I think you're absolutely right. And by the way, I don't know if he mentioned it, but Conan Byrne once scored from inside his own half.
He did. He didn't mention it on the podcast, but he did score in Daniel Park, which we will talk about Bowls later on. That's probably a segue actually into Bowls. So, Conan part 2, we're going to chat to Mark Rossiter, and we're going to chat Bowls. We're going to chat about Declan Devine, Dundalk, and much more. So, stay tuned.
Get in touch. You can email us at extratimelive@gmail.com or tag us on Instagram using the hashtag League of Ireland or tweet us at Extratime News.
Let's do it.
Welcome back to part 2. Did I say Mark Rossiter is joining us? Mark, how are you?
How are you, lads? Are you well?
How are you getting on so far? Your new role, I suppose, with Pats. Want to start with that first?
It's interesting, yeah. Like let's say I would have done commentary with Oisin and Donal at different times in different places and stuff like that. So now I suppose you're trying to pick holes in teams for John at St. Pat's. So yeah, it's interesting to watch teams' tactics, try and decipher where you can hurt them or where they're going to hurt, where their strengths are with regards to Pat. So yeah, I'm enjoying it. It's interesting. So yeah, it's been good so far.
Just to clarify, that is opposition analyst for Pats, isn't it?
Yeah, opposition analysis. Yeah, so I more or less go to every game that they're going to be playing and the following week and do a report for the coaching staff and yeah, see how it works out.
Things you were doing in your own time anyway, Razzie.
Look, I enjoyed it. Like, I suppose, look, when you're doing the commentary or not, you're more or less calling it as you say it, really. So I suppose with the likes of yourself and Oisin, you're there chatting away. So it gives me the eyes on a game, let's say, and trying to pick out little parts because you're obviously following the ball a little bit more. So, yeah, like it's interesting, I suppose, trying to break down trends of the way teams play, strengths, weaknesses, and yeah, it's an interesting part of it, definitely.
How different is it to watch the match, say, just as a fan, to suddenly, like, is there certain things you might be told for the game, like wants to watch a fullback, see what he does off the ball, or just is there things like that you have to kind of maybe tune into a bit more, maybe to say, maybe not even following the ball, probably maybe watch the shape and so on?
Yeah, like let's say when I would have watched Dundalk, you would have seen that Archie Davis is an attacking fullback, but defensively he'll start a little bit higher than the back four. And look at it, it's just panned out that way that I suppose as a fullback, if the likes of Boiler or Annesley or somebody like that is up and they're going for a header, fullback is always covering, but he always starts a little bit higher. And look at it's just panned out in the last two games that they've caught with a high line and no covering defender at the same time. So it's just looking for little patterns like that. I suppose look at that had probably been the most obvious in the last 2 weeks, let's say. So it was probably the first one that came to mind. But looking at, like, I'd say Dundalk will look to dominate the play and meticulously pass and stuff like this, whereas Shelburne will be a lot more defensively minded, stifle counter attacks, have two number sixes sitting there, so they're harder to break down. So it's trying to find little little nuggets of information, I suppose, that you can give the coaching staff.
How do you decide, Mark, what you give the coaches and what you don't? Because you could possibly overload them as well.
Look, at the way that I try and operate is I give them as much information as humanly possible that's relevant, and they can pick out of it as much as they want. Really, more so, I'd be of the opinion that you can never have too much information. Whether it be from set pieces, dead balls. Like you look at Tyreek, let's say, with a wonderful crosser. Everybody knows he's wonderful from dead balls, so that's not new information. So it's trying to give as much information as is humanly possible, and then picking out what they feel is relevant to their game plan going into the game.
Is this a good way as well of keeping people in the game who don't necessarily want the pressure of management or being a full-time assistant coach? You are still involved in the game. You're still watching football. You're still around the game, which is important, but you don't have the pressure of being a manager.
Or that you don't have the interest in coaching or managing or shit,
Yeah.
No, it's enjoyable, but like if I wasn't doing this Oisin, I wasn't doing the commentary, I'd still be going to games because I'm a fan of the league. I like where it's going. The crowds are wonderful. So I suppose, like every League of Ireland fan, we're hoping that the stadiums will follow suit, that the crowds will keep growing because it's a good product, and I feel like we're all enjoying it. And look, at not to have a dig at UCD, I think everybody loves how competitive it is now. Even though UCD could beat anybody on their night, don't get me wrong, but I think everybody's enjoying the competitiveness of it. You look at your Galway and your Waterford, how well they're doing, so like how wonderful they're doing well so far in the start of the league and stuff like that. So I think it's brought it back to literally, if you don't show up on a night, you're going to have a difficult night, so you need to be at it every week.
Yeah, I was just thinking there as well, wasn't Stevie O'Donnell opposition analysis before he went into coaching? It could be a stepway into your coaching career yourself.
No, I don't.
Rossi's going to Bowes. Rossi's going to Bowes. You heard it here first.
No, he's going for Ireland, lads. He's going for Ireland.
Do you know what? Like Stevie O'Donnell, when I played with him, he would have. You always knew he was going to go into coaching and management. I'd rather sit up in the stand and try and break down teams. I like having conversations with people. That's why I probably like doing the commentary, whether I was good or not, But I like being up there and being from a vantage point, and I suppose watching effectively a game of chess, two teams against each other, more so than being on the pitch. So I understand.
Were you like this as a player as well? Because I remember us doing commentary for Ocean FM in Weavers Park, and you were relaxed to the point of falling over while we were watching the game. Now, still making all the observations and showing enough life as a co-commentator to be interesting. But I was the other side of it then. It was like in Father Ted when you had the priest with the boring voice and the priest with the exciting voice. And I remember people looking around, and even you looking at me at times going, why are you getting so excited? It's 0-0. But were you like this as a player as well? Were you kind of relaxed and able to see all around you?
No, well, I was fairly laid back as a player. Like I didn't, I suppose I didn't let things bother me too much. And, every game is a new game. So you go out and, I suppose, do the best that you can and stuff like that. But I'd never get too worked up about football. I enjoyed it. I suppose, I was told in 19 I'd never play football again. So I treated every game like it was my last, and I enjoyed it. I don't miss it because I suppose you don't miss the injuries and stuff like that. So I enjoy going to watch it as a fan, literally, of the league now,
Was that an injury related thing when you were told you wouldn't play again?
It was when I was diagnosed with the tumours. The more or less said I'll never be able to play football again.
You proved them wrong. You're a resilient character, aren't you?
Well, like in fairness, I put it down to I had an artist of a surgeon, let's say, more so than anything. Look, I worked hard to get back to where I was, and I probably put a bit of steel in my mentality that I was like, if somebody's going to put a roadblock in front of me, I'll try and prove you wrong. But look, I done an interview when I left England, and the reporter asked me, he said, if you could give any young fella anything, what would it be? And I said a career-ending injury, because you'll soon decide whether you want to be a footballer or not.
On that resilience then, Mark, just in terms of Stevie O'Donnell at the moment, at Dundalk is need to show a bit of resilience in terms of what's going on at the club at the moment, pressure on him. Another defeat the other night, as you well know. in terms of himself, should they change manager? I personally don't think they should. I think Steve O'Donnell should give given a longer chance at Dundalk, but obviously the fans at the moment aren't happy. I know there's room in the boardroom again with more investors coming in. It's just, what's your own kind of point of view and pose your own former captain manager there?
I wouldn't change it personally. I like Stevie. I've known him for nearly 30 years, give or take. But I think there's been too many wholesale changes at Dundalk. I think they need a bit of continuity. I don't know who does the recruitment. I think the players owe him. Like the performance against Sligo, anything that could have went wrong on the night, it did. But the players, I would have said the work rate was an issue there, because when the chips are down, the minimum that should be required of a player is 100%. And to me, there was too many players on the night who didn't work, and it was, I'm going to say an easy 5-0 victory. But they gave Pats a game then last week. They came out, they were unlucky. Look at it, it was probably a mistake for the goal as well, and they lose 1-0, but it's a tight affair. So, I think the minimum that they should be given is 100%. There's a lot of new faces there, so they're going to need time to bed, and I don't think it's right to change manager as of yet.
That's one argument, Mark, that people were making about Dundalk, is that there's too many loan players coming in, there's too many new faces coming in. But when you look at Sligo Rovers, just for example, the same amount of players came in on loan in the off season. They've seemed to have clicked better. Like, is it just really luck of the draw? Like, because we saw Sligo Rovers doing the exact same thing last year. Myself and yourself have covered a fair amount of their games, and it's pretty much like night and day in terms of attitude there now. So is it just, when it comes down to that, the amount of new faces coming in, etc., is it just luck of the draw, do you think?
I think yes and no. I think it depends where you're signing the players. As in, I don't mean from what club, I'd say what position. Fabrice Hartman has been on loan for a year and a half at this stage. So if you're classing him as one of the players, I'd say he understands the way Rossiter wants to play, and John would have him as one of his pivotal players there. But I think John has recruited really well. Sometimes it'll suit probably better to have a smaller budget, because you need to be a little bit more meticulous with what you're signing. When you're going across the water, whether it be into Europe or whether it be into the UK, if you're signing lads, I'd probably say the best loan signing I've seen in recent times is probably Freddie Draper for Drogheda. I thought he was superb in everything he did. However, you're only going to have him for a 3-month spell, because the UK clubs like players coming over playing competitive football and then probably going out on loan or going into their first team after pre-season. So I think it's hard for them, because you have to look at, yes, they're taking a punt on them financially. It's probably, it's costing them a little bit more, but then you have to look at your academies and stuff like that and go, what is it that you're bringing through, or what? Obviously they're going looking for players, because the players nationally they feel aren't there or up to the standard that they're looking for.
That Dundalk squad then, where do you think they've lacked in terms of, say, transfer activity so far? What position have they left themselves short, do you think, looking at them?
Look, the jury's going to be out on this, but I think Nathan Shepherd was wonderful for the 2 years that he was there. So Shelby has come in. I've only seen him play that game against Sligo, but he was, I'm not saying at fault for 3 goals, but he definitely had a part to play in 3 of them anyways in the first half. And I can't remember the last time I seen a goalkeeper getting taken off at half time if it wasn't for an injury. I just think they're nice footballers, but it didn't surprise me that when they played at home against Galway, that they got beaten. I was very surprised when they played against Rovers and got beaten 5-0, to be honest. I wasn't expecting that, because you've got 2 teams that I would say that play similar styles, but Rovers just capitalised on every mistake that night, and they just seemed like a more together group. I just thought that Dundalk went out with a whimper on that particular occasion. But as I said, when they played against Pats then last week, it was obviously a lot tighter affair, and there was, Dundalk will probably feel a bit aggrieved that they didn't snatch one, and I know Pats will feel aggrieved that they didn't, I suppose, add to the tally as well. So I think he got a response from them. Whether whether that'll continue, I don't know. But I think you have to be very careful where you're getting your loan signings from, because I wouldn't have said in recent years that there's, I wouldn't have said that there was many that you would have said was a star player when they were leaving the loan deal.
Yeah. In terms of, say, just last one, Dundalk, you mentioned kind of about the team. Is it a lack of experience, or is it a lack of physicality? Maybe you mentioned kind of Galway, maybe going up there beating them, Sligo going up there beating them. Like, what is a mixture of both possibly?
No, well, like Sligo wouldn't have been overly physical on the night. I think you could probably put it down to 4-0 at half time, and it was probably 4 mistakes. Or when you break it down, there were definitely that they could have been avoided. Against Galway, look at what they're going to be. They're fit, they're wrecked, they're combative, they challenge for everything, and they're dangerous from set pieces. So there's nobody in the league like them. Probably the only ones you could compare them to would be Shells, let's say. But Shells that have the likes of Jarvis and stuff like that. So and Liam Burt on the other wing, who'd be potential stars, let's say. So I think any team that plays against Galway this year is going to have a difficult night.
I suppose, Rossi, another team that's made like a plethora of signings really is Bohs. Like we saw on the deadline, a number of defenders coming in, because a lot was made after Rob Cornwall got injured in the first game of the season about how light they were at the back. That seems to have been a panic kind of move now that it's kind of cost Declan Devine his job. I suppose. What's your own view on that?
Look at again, I'd say I would be of the opinion that if they had a question mark over Decky, that you do it at the end of the season last year, and you give somebody a blanket coming in that they can look at, I suppose, with Pat Fenlon, and bringing in players that's going to suit that manager. I think they've probably missed a trick with a transfer window there. So yeah, now like they're going to have to manage with that till the summer. So I don't think it helps when you've Keith Buckley, who's their club captain, who's injured, and he's going to miss the majority of the season. And then I suppose the one that's going to work off that is Jordan Flores, and you're playing him centre back, because I think you're losing his quality in that centre midfield role. So it's not ideal. I think Cornwall would have been brought in there to play with Keane Byrne. A bit of youth and experience there, and I suppose Cornwall to guide him through games, because I think Keane Byrne is a promising young lad, in fairness. But they still just look light at the back. They really do, can't see out a 0-0. When they concede, they look like they're going to concede again. And maybe that's a confidence thing as well, start of the season. Look, like in fairness, it's not an easy place to play in Phibsbury, Like they'll be your home team, definitely, but they'll be on your back. So if it's a difficult time for them. But in fairness, if anybody can get a rise out of them, it's Fenlon, in fairness.
What are your thoughts on him going in as interim manager there? Obviously, he's been around the place, knows the club very well, but a lot of fans kind of seem to be laying the blame at his feet for not kind of moving Devine on a bit sooner, or questioning maybe his role in the recruitment of the players that were brought in.
Look, I don't know who does be doing the recruiting. I could say the same at Dundalk. Like, I don't know who does the recruiting for them, whether it's Stevie or whether it's somebody as a director of football. And I'd say the same with Pohls. But having played for Pat, I would be on the. I doubt he's changed that much. That it's like if you go out and you don't give your all, and you don't, I suppose, effectively break your bollocks, you won't play. Plain and simple. So whether you're a senior, whether you're an international, whether you're this, if you don't go out there and do your job, you'll be sitting on the bench or you'll be sitting in the stand.
Are you surprised Pat Fennon's been out of work in terms of saying on the touchline? I know he's been doing direct football at Linfield and now he's back at Bohs. Are you surprised he's actually upstairs rather than down on the grass?
No, like I suppose the way that it's gone, like he took over Shells in the early 2000s, was it 2004 or something? He became player manager. He's decorated as a player, as a manager, European runs, you name it. So maybe he's just decided that he's evolved into, he wants to more or less, I suppose, be up there and running the structures of a club rather than running a team. So I think you need to send Pat a message and bring him on and see what he thinks. But yeah, look, I wouldn't have any problems with Pat going in as an interim manager. Do I think he'll want to stay there as manager? I wouldn't think so. I'd say he's gone beyond that at this stage.
You kind of mentioned there about the timing of Devine sacking, and I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. If you're going to make the decision to kind of remove him, should have been probably done in the winter, but it's not a strange time to maybe sack him after 5 games as well.
Yeah, when I was at the game the other night, he was walking off. He was dejected. The crowd were giving a bit of stick, let's say, to look at not just him. But when I seen Decky making the walk, I was like, I think this could be the end of his reign, let's say. But the way that the international break is coming, I thought he would have got the Derry game, and potentially it would have been after that. But I was not surprised to see it, but I thought he would have got one more game, and then it would have been done in the international break.
Yeah, I was watching that. I watched that game back in full last night, and I was nearly annoyed on behalf of Bohs fans because they actually do have an awful lot of talent, but for whatever reason, it just wasn't clicking. I don't know why that is. It isn't necessarily always the fault of the manager. And when any person loses their job, I feel an element of sympathy for them. And Decky has many fine qualities as a manager, as we saw with Bohs last season. Got them to a cup final. It didn't work out, I know. But do you think that whoever comes in, they're actually working with a good bunch of players? Like, I mean, look at the options they have. Connolly can break down the right-hand side and bring them high up the pitch. Clark was on the PFAI team of the season last year. Some of those players that were recruited, we haven't really seen them yet, but on the face of it, they seem to be quality. And there's others as well. Danny Grant, if he kicks it. So there's actually a lot of talent there.
There is, but then you'd look at them defensively, where they struggled last year. They had such a wonderful start to the season, and they still don't look like they've plugged them holes, in my opinion. Like, Cornwall coming in is only one player. And he's not in the highlight of his career. You'd imagine it's more to the twilight. So from that, I still think that they're a wee bit light. The fact that Cornwall got injured after 36 minutes of the first game of the season, it's it's horrible for him because he's out for the season, and you'd never wish it on any player. But I still feel if he was in the defence, that would still be a little bit light, to be honest.
Yeah, and that kind of opens the debate now to who's going to take over. And like Oisin, I was trying to rack my brain around coming home from work, what manager come in. I mean, I know Alan Reynolds is probably maybe the favourite due to the fact he's a work relationship with Pat Fenlon previously, but like there's not many candidates out. It's a strange time to sack a manager. There's not many candidates out there to take that job.
Well, maybe they were thinking, well, we know who we're going to go after when they move Declan on. I don't know, by the way. Or maybe they thought, well, there's a number of candidates out there. There's a certain Mr. Kenny, whether or not he wants to get back involved this quickly, I'm not sure. Alan Reynolds would be a very good option, a much sought after coach/manager. And the thing is as well, with Pat there, would he be more of a coach than a manager? Because there's different ways to manage a team or coach a team or direct a team, whatever way you want to put it. I spoke to him last week. He said he was happy with Waterford, but then again, in an interview, he's hardly going to say, yeah, I'm unhappy. I actually want to get out of here. But him and Keith Long seem to be a very good double act. From what I could see around this, it seems to be quite settled in Waterford. And this is something we spoke about in great detail a couple of weeks ago. Of course, you never really know because you don't know what's going on inside any club. So, look, I think Reynolds will be a good option, but they might go left field. Like Paddy McLaughlin, who was working with Derry, who did a great job with Cliftonville. I think he's still floating around. I think he might still be free. David Healy, who's done a good enough job with Linfield over the years, has a working relationship with Pat Fenlon. And that's something I haven't seen being said. Fenlon was the general manager at Linfield, where he did a very good job and was highly thought of. And him and David worked together. Now, the thing is if you're at Linfield, if you're not winning leagues, you're doing something very wrong because of their dominance. But still, he's done a good job and was within seconds of taking them into the Europa Conference League group stages. So look, there's probably names that we don't know. There's always a surprise name. James Kelly's doing a good enough job at Wexford. Yeah. I think
that there's a person I don't think gets enough credit. Like, he's done a great job when he was at Dundalk, and I think when he went back to Dundalk was well, he settled the ship well. He was a game away from FA Cup final against Pats. I mean, I think his record kind of gets a bit overlooked sometimes.
Yeah, and a very, very decent football brain. And you can pick that up from when you hear him on commentary on Virgin and Off the Ball or whatever. I haven't heard Vinny talk about it. I don't know if he necessarily wants to get back into management. There's been a few openings since he stepped away, and he hasn't. Well, whether or not he's gone for them or not, I don't know. But he'd certainly have the skills, and he'd certainly have the managerial acumen to do it. Whether or not he wants to, I don't know.
Another name that was being kind of floated around was Stephen Rice, which I thought was an interesting one, given his recent role with Ireland. I'm not sure with him being with his links with Shamrock Rovers, how the both fans would be receptive to that. But certainly an interesting candidate there, I would have thought.
I don't think.
And Mark Rossiter as well, of course. Rossi's gone very quiet. He's saying nothing.
Yeah, but Ricer played for both, so I know he was more. So he's played with both. He's definitely somebody who, like, he's got his pro license, so he has all the credentials behind him. International, let's say, he was doing the analysis and stuff like that, but he was coaching for a couple of years beforehand with the Rovers, U teams and stuff like that. So they offer him his first opportunity at a senior role.
And of course, I'm massively biased because he's a friend of mine, right? So I just want to get that out there from the start. But you look at the job that Kevin Doherty has done at Drogheda United, how he is not linked to bigger jobs, with the greatest respect to Drogheda, I don't know.
But he signed, was it a
new
2 or 3 year deal he signed, no?
Yeah, but lads, money solves all woes. So, okay, the compensation thing, Bulls would have to pay it to Drogheda, but maybe they have that money. I haven't had a look at their bank account. I don't know, but if you want a good manager,
doesn't come back though to the. It's the 5 games in. That's the problem, isn't it? This isn't December, November when you can. I mean, Kevin, you great point Park Bowles, and he probably is going to leave Drogheda to go somewhere. That's his progression probably. But 5 games into the season to walk away from your club, it's a big call, Yeah, it's a tough fight. I don't know.
Sorry, I just want to be very clear. That's my suggestion, not Kevin's suggestion. That's just me looking at it at his record and what he's done, and saying, well, surely he should be connected to any decent job in the league that pops up. But of course, he does have a decent job and has gone full time, and Drogheda are going places, and they have that investment. So maybe there's a project he wants to be part of long term. I don't know.
Well, when you threw out Rennie's name there that he's been linked with, he was on their hit list before Decky got the job. So, it makes sense, highly regarded within the league. So, I think Rennie would be a great shout. But
he'd be fantastic, yeah. By the way, it's completely nothing to do with the management side, but I remember how much Rennie loved being a pantomime bad guy in League of Ireland, and he came back to Cork City to play, I think it was for Rovers, and he was being booed, and I asked him after the game, what did you think of that? And he said, I'm disappointed. I thought I'd get it way worse.
First time I seen Alan Reynolds, it was at a Finn Harps game. My brother was playing, and Rennie was, I think he was player manager or something at the time, but he was definitely one of the senior players there. And Chris Breen was playing up front, running amok. He was, pacey striker. And Dave Mulcahy was trying to bury him anyways. So I'm fairly sure that Rennie had taken over as caretaker because the manager had been sacked or whatever. So Rennie was there saying to Mullers, he says, I'm going to kill you if you get sent off. But anyways, the game was finished, and Chris Breen went up to shake hands with him or whatever, and Rennie grabbed him by the hand as he shook it and decked him. Oh, he absolutely sparked him. So yeah, Rennie's ledge.
He has 1, if not 2, All-Ireland junior football medals with Waterford as well. Little known Rennie fact.
Doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, good Gaelic footballer.
Mark, before I let you go, just one of your former teammates has been kind of doing what he does best to score goals. Pat Hooban, are you surprised how well he's doing it there at the moment?
No. Pat's a machine. And I suppose if you look at Derry over the last 2 seasons, he's probably what you think on paper is the missing link. And just the signing of Pat Hooban, to me, probably put them as favourites to win the title, to be honest. If they can keep everybody fit, that is, which has been a problem for, I suppose, they're an aging team. So it's been a problem keeping their marquee players like Duffy, McElhenney, patching at times, keeping them fit, having a continuous goal scorer like Jamie McGonigal was good in Rory's first season, let's say. and they just couldn't. Anybody couldn't hit the ground running. They've got Whelan there, and God love him, he's injured again. But if Hoban can stay fit, it'll be very tight for them, definitely.
That's the difference thing. I know a lot of people have said it since he signed, but like that is probably going to be the difference if they're going to win the league this year. Is Pat Hoban.
Yeah, 100%. And he's, you know what? As he gets older, he's getting more dangerous, if that makes sense, because he's becoming cleverer. He knows that it's not about big movements, these little subtle movements, like when he scored that header against Pats to equalise. It was literally just a little 2-yard thing. Anton Breslin gets blocked and Pat gets half a yard for a header and scores. So he's a machine. If he stays fit, he'll have 25 league goals this year, easily.
What's your thoughts been, Mark, on the start of the season on the whole? I know you said you tipped Derry there to win the league with Hoban heading up the road to the Brandywell there, but just thought, I suppose, across the board, how have you felt about the start of the season?
Yeah, it's been interesting, isn't it? Because there's nobody, let's say, undefeated, with 100% record, let's say. But it's it's been very interesting. Obviously, look at my focus is on Pats at the minute, but I've enjoyed it. I enjoy watching the games. Going to the grounds, different grounds, provided that I don't have to drive to Derry for a game, I'm good. But no, it's class. I suppose the way the weekend has fallen, I'll be in Sligo on Saturday night watching them against Strada. So it gives me the opportunity to go and watch Pats, who I haven't seen since the President's Cup. So I've enjoyed it. I think everybody has. It's, as I said earlier on, it's very competitive. It's a highly competitive league. The front three of Waterford, let's say Parsons and Asamoah, are lightning and have quality. And Paul Hammond, let's say, at 62 years of age, is still, firing goals, but it's been brilliant. Look, I'm the biggest advocate for the league. I love it. I think it's brilliant. And, hopefully we get the right investment and we can start churning out better players and making the league more competitive year on year.
Mark, last question then before we let you go. From a Pats perspective, how are Pats going to be Shells on Friday night?
It's going to be difficult. Look at Shells, you know what you're going to get. If you don't match them for work rate, at some stage they'll turn you over. They're highly organised. They're more defensive minded than some other teams. But Jarvis is a wonderful player. Out in the left wing, getting him back again is great for them. They've got options now with John Martin and Shawnee Boyd through the middle. John O'Sullivan looks like reinvented, I suppose, from what he looked like at Bowes last year, and they've got good options off the bench. Like you're looking at Shane Farrell and Matty Smith came on late in the game. Sean Boyd came on after 65. So they've got, it's not that they've got quality in their 11, like they've got a strong bench as well. So they're going to be a game for anybody. And they've got options of changing things up. John Martin would be more mobile than Sean Boyd, but Sean Boyd's 6'4", so he's going to be a handful. So, yeah. And then, Matty Smith, who, to be honest, I kind of forgot about, and he came on as a sub. I was going, Jesus, they've got quality in dangerous places. So it's going to be an interesting night in Inchicore. That's not to take away from any of them, because the likes of Brandon Kavanagh, look, I'm probably the biggest fan of Lennon in the league, but Rory Keaton is starting to score now as well. So it's going to be an interesting night. Hopefully 3-0 Pats. So yeah, see how we get on.
Mark, great time. Thanks so much. We'll chat again soon.
No worries. It's anytime.
And that's pretty much it for today's show. Oisin, are you on comms to this weekend?
I am St. Pat's in Shelburne, really looking forward to it. Didn't get to go there last Friday night because I had a pre-booked function, but very much looking forward to that one. It'll be some encounter. There's always a great atmosphere when these two meet, especially in Richmond Park. And I'm considering Longford and Treaty United on Saturday night, because Longford, outside of Mount Hawk Park, is the one League of Ireland venue I've never been for a match day.
Donal, Showgrounds?
Yeah, I'll be on LOI TV duty this weekend for the first time this season for Drogheda, coming up to Sligo to take on Sligo Rovers. So yeah, really looking forward to that, getting back in the gantry for LOI TV. I've done a couple of games for Ocean FM now, so it'd be nice to switch it up a little bit for for LOI TV. And so I'll be in the Showgrounds Saturday night. Really looking forward to what should be another really good game.
Cool for a voice note, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely.
Should maybe say that to you off air.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, I actually be in the former League of Ireland ground on Friday. I'll be in the Ivy grounds for Kilcock Celtic versus St James's Gate in the Senior League, so I've actually missed the game. But lads, thanks for coming on. We'll chat again soon.
Thanks very much, Luke. See you later.
And thank you for listening, and we'll chat to you all next week.